Breathing patterns have an emotion linked to them. When we are breathing slowly, we'll be in a more calm and centered state versus when we're breathing short and shallow. This topic is so important to me because it truly crippled my life and honestly made me the worst version of myself. And I know I can't be the only person out there that has this self-criticism because I hear stories about it and I talk to people about it, the things they tell themselves. Self-criticism is the fastest way to destroy your confidence and to create fear for yourself, which can stop you from doing a multitude of things and lead to anxiety. Again, I say this because I've been there. I've been so viciously brutal to myself that I thought I was just the lowest human on earth, even though looking back, I had quite a bit of good things going for me. Obviously, there's things I need to change and improve on, but I had quite a bit going for me. But that self-criticism cut me so deep because it was just on repeat all the time. Again, there's lots of topics that we could dive into my own self-criticism. But I think one of the strongest ones, or at least one of the ones I want to talk about, was the self-criticism I had for my size and my shape and my body. I grew up in a family with 5 brothers, and we were all very competitive. And I was a middle child, and probably a lot leaner and skinnier or definitely a lot skinnier than my other brothers. And we used to wrestle and fight all the time, and not being able to hold my own really was tough. Because I was always so competitive, because I wanted to be seen, because I wanted to be better. And so I was so critical of myself from that time, from being a kid up until I was probably 26, 27, on how my size and or my lack thereof. And so it actually really was a big turning point for me to, one, be able to notice that I wasn't, but to be able to cut through that and realize that it wasn't necessarily true. And that criticism ran deep from a young age. I remember my dad telling me that, and no fault of his own, he probably meant well, but that I wouldn't gain muscle like my brothers would. And I'd always be leaner, and I would always struggle to put on weight like my brothers, because they had a different body shape and size. And that stuck with me. And I would be so critical of myself on why girls or women wouldn't like me, or why I didn't make sports teams, or if I did make the sports team, or why I wasn't good enough. And it really cut my life up quite a bit, because it poured into high school. It poured into other things, because once you have that criticism that's deep and you believe it, it can bleed into these other areas. It can bleed into having acne in school and thinking you're the ugliest person in high school and think you're terrible at relationships. It can bleed into all these things. And so that's why I want to talk about this, because it's something that I've finally figured out how to navigate through. And if you're like me and have that self-criticism that just cuts you and paralyzes you, this video, I hope you find a lot of value, and I hope it can help you, because I know this techniques really worked for me. So, first question then. So before we go dive into the 3 questions, the best thing you can do when you are feeling those moments of self-criticism is to take a minute and breathe. Our breath controls our emotions, and all of our breathing patterns have an emotion linked to them. When we are breathing slowly, we'll be in a more calm and centered state versus when we're breathing short and shallow or quick. So my recommendation is to take 4 breaths using box breathing. So you inhale for 4 seconds, hold for 4 seconds, exhale for 4 seconds, and then hold that for 4 seconds, and repeat this process 4 times. This method alone is enough just to help you get back into your body and to help you get out of here when all those thoughts are running around crazy, and one self-criticism turns to another, until pretty soon you're just you just feel like you're this awful human. So once you're able to do that and breathe and go through those 4 reps, the next thing to do is ask yourself, is this me? Is this voice that you're hearing, or this voice you're saying, or this thing you're saying to yourself, is it you? Now, this is super tough because self-criticism's in the name. It is yourself saying it. So it can seem like this is all you creating it, but it's not exactly 100% true. When you look into how habits are created, when you look into how behaviors and how your subconscious mind works, and it's a lot of research I've been doing the last 6 months, and it's fascinating, you realize that we are influenced by the 5 to 7 closest people in our lives. And so when I ask the question, is it me? When you're asking that question, you want to start with that, but then lead into other questions. Like if, for example, oh, I'm so skinny for myself, it was so skinny. I look back, where did I first hear that phrase? Well, I first heard it from my dad. Okay, right, huh. And then I heard it from my brothers. Oh, okay, or maybe a friend. Then you want to ask, well, what happened? How did you feel when that was said to you? Most of the time, it's a negative response. You don't feel good about yourself. You go inwards. You get quiet. You feel terrible. So looking at where did this happen? Where did this happen? What happened? And what feelings you felt when that came up? As I said before, this can be influenced by the 7 closest people to you. Most time, parents, close friends, or family. Not only that, it can be influenced by how you spend your time, which I think is so critical because that's your attention, and your attention is the most powerful thing you have. Where you spend your free time can make a massive difference. So if you are someone like myself that used to constantly be on your phone and doom scrolling on Instagram or Facebook, being inundated with things that are not helpful to you, and you know it, and you can feel it inside, you can feel that it's feeding that little beast inside you telling you you're not good enough, or you're too skinny, or you don't look good enough, or whatever. Why can't you have this boyfriend, or why can't you have this girlfriend, or why can't you have more money? When you have those things after, that's when you know you're not this isn't helping you, this isn't serving you any. So my suggestion is to look at it critically. Is this voice you? Is it truly you saying this? And again, I told you, like I said before, it's the hardest one, but if you can really dive into it and ask those questions, where do you hear it? How do you hear it? Where do you spend your time? How do you feel after you heard this phrase? You realize a lot of time it's not actually you, it's somebody else. Maybe they mean well. Maybe they're trying to be critical and harsh of you. It's not the point. It's just the point that someone said it to you. And it's not necessarily your voice. The next question then, is it true? This also is super tough because in that moment, it feels very true. It feels like everything is real in that moment and that it's the absolute truth. But when you ask yourself, when you do that breath and you just try to do your absolute best to put all that attention to your breath and then ask those questions and start asking yourself, is it absolutely true? You'll realize there's a little bit of wiggle room there. And again, I say this from experience, being so critical of myself in relationships, in my past relationship, because I allowed myself to be treated terribly and then would treat myself terribly. And honestly got to the point where I mentioned before, I even had suicidal thoughts of ending it. But anytime I ask myself, is it absolutely true? I realized there was a little bit of wiggle room in there because intuitively I knew it wasn't 100% true. Yes, I did this thing, or maybe I messed up, maybe I made a mistake, maybe it was my fault that I, said the wrong thing. But it doesn't mean that I was an absolute terrible person. Did it mean that I was an absolute terrible boyfriend, girlfriend? That means I'm, absolutely skinny and will never put on muscle. When you use that filter of absolute, it helps to filter out any of that extra garbage. So use that Not only is it true, but is it absolutely 100% true? When you do that, you'll find that alone right there will take out probably 50 to 70% of that self-criticism. The next step then is to ask, and this is probably the easiest one, is to ask, is it helpful? Some self-criticism can be absolutely helpful. It's called constructive criticism. And sometimes people mean well, they mean to say things to you that is supposed to be constructive, but you take it a certain way, or they came off in a way that was kind of harsh. Maybe you're just having a bad day, or you're both having a bad day and they said it to you. But either way, when you've done that breathing, when you've asked, is it me? When you've asked yourself, is it true? And lastly, ask, is this helpful? Is there something here I can learn from? A lot of the times you'll realize that there is, or there can be, and how to know then if there's something there. The way I've always done this is ask myself, well, is there something I can learn from this interaction, from this criticism? And if I'm able to answer a yes or a maybe, I sit with it for a second. And if I feel a bit of hope after, going, you know what, you're right, maybe I shouldn't have asked that question or responded like that, or maybe I do need to exercise more. Maybe I am pretty lean right now, or don't have enough strength, or whatever it is. If it leaves you feeling with a feeling of hope after, then I think it's a good thing. Then I think it's something to hold on to. And I would add one more thing to that, is don't just leave with that sense of hope, but set aside a piece, a big or small, an action. Set aside some action you can do, because that action will help you want to move forward with it and take ownership of it, and take that thing that maybe the person saying it to you did have a point, and maybe you can agree with them, realize, yeah, you know, I do need to change this character part of me, because that's what makes us better humans, is somebody else sometimes telling us, hey, you're a real asshole when you play this game. Or maybe, you know, you're really selfish when we go to a potluck, or whatever it is. So can you learn from it? Can you get a sense of hope after thinking about it, and thinking about, is this something that you can become a better person from? And then take a few actions and set yourself up to take some action. Because I've done this time and time again, and continue to do this, and continue to try to take action in my life to make myself a better person. And I find at the very least, it builds my confidence, and which ties back to the beginning. And that self-confidence is the antidote to that self-criticism. So thank you so much for listening. I appreciate you taking the time out of your day to do this. If there's anybody in your life, or maybe it's you, that is struggling from self-criticism, because I know I can't be the only one, share it or listen to this again. And if you need somebody to reach out to just to talk about this stuff, I'd invite you to go to lifepurposely.ca. You can sign up for our newsletter. You can reach out. So again, thank you so much, and I'll catch you on the next episode.